Law at Work is sponsored by Perrett van Niekerk Woodhouse Macholo, leading labour law specialists representing businesses throughout South and Southern Africa, as well as Case Law, the quick, fast and easy labour law search engine.
Hello, I'm Simon Coleman and welcome to Law at Work. Some industries have a higher frequency of discipline and CCMA activity than others. This week we'll be exploring the pressures and methodology of dealing with this in the retail sector. Tanya Cohen of Woolworths joins us in the studio. Hello Tanya.
Hi Simon.
Tanya, the retail sector does feature as one of the highest referring categories if one looks at the CCMA statistics. What is the reason for that?
Well, it seems to be more or less proportionate to the size of the sector and the number of employees employed in the sector. And in fact, we've looked into it in quite a lot of detail. And if you compare that, the CCMA caseload actually mainly deals with services sector employees,
yes,
because manufacturing employees and mining employees are part of the bargaining council.
Right.
It actually makes sense. I think if you saw the trends going back, is that there used to be a time when retail actually had a much higher percentage than the other sectors. Gradually, some of the other sectors are coming through. Security is not far behind.
A lot less employees in that sector with a substantial number of cases.
Yeah.
Okay. Tanya, seeing as you're handling such high volumes in a major retailer in South Africa, how does one deal with all of the disciplinary matters? Because, I mean, obviously not every disciplinary case results in a CCMA matter, but you are dealing with a tremendous number.
Yeah, and it's obviously with difficulty. It's very, very time consuming. And especially if you take an approach where you want to use progressive discipline rather than going straight into dismissals, it takes longer, because ultimately if you can get the employee to improve,
yes,
if you can get progress, if you can ensure that the employee doesn't repeat the transgression, it's far better than bringing in a completely new employee and having to retrain them.
yes.
The way we deal with it is just to try and build capacity internally. But it's exceptionally difficult because your management is pulled away from their jobs effectively.
How many employees do you have at Woolworths?
Approximately 17,000.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's and if you look at it in terms of our disciplinary statistics, we've got just under 1,000 cases that we have going to dismissal. And about half of those that go to the CCMA.
Wow, so 1,000 cases result
actually
in
about
the
750. I exaggerated that a little bit.
What would the ratio of cases be, let's call them disciplinary hearings, be to dismissals?
It's about 10% would be dismissals.
Wow,
yeah.
So that's a tremendous caseload that's being handled. I mean, have you assessed the costs in running those processes?
We obviously have, and we assess it against our management time, and it is exceptionally time consuming.
I can imagine.
Like if you think, and we don't use a formal procedure for verbal warnings and written warnings.
Yes.
We use an informal counselling improvement approach. So it's just our final written warnings and dismissals that potentially go the formal inquiry route.
Right.
But you think of the time it takes for an investigator to come off the floor, to investigate the matter, to obtain all the evidence, a chairperson to sit through the matter. And cases can take, on a simple till discrepancy matter, it can take anything from 2 hours to a few days. It takes a lot of time out of the workday.
We had Jackie Kelly on the show a while ago of Andrew Levy, and she said in some of the financial institutions the costs were as high as 150,000 Rand per disciplinary inquiry, just because of all the cumulative amount of time that people were putting into these things. We've heard a lot of criticism, perhaps of the CCMA, of unions and of the employers, people saying that the disciplinary inquiries are over-proceduralized, if there be such a word. Can you comment on that?
It's a very difficult thing, because procedure's there for a reason. One is that you actually want to have a fair work environment. You want to make sure that the outcome is correct.
Yes.
The other reason is that there's always the saying that justice must be seen to be done. Not only must it be done, it must be seen to be done. And that's exceptionally important in the workplace, because people must know what to expect of the employer. They must know where the rules are. So you don't want to undermine those principles. Procedure's there for a very important reason. But I'm not too sure. We debate it constantly.
Yes.
What more you can actually take out of the procedure and still make sure that the procedure is fair. Now, you can make guidelines as clear as possible, and you can try and ensure that the process is as effective and efficient as possible. But it's very difficult to take out more. And if you look at where, why are employers following the procedures as religiously as they are, it's because you don't want to be challenged. You want to make sure that you've actually gone through the procedures correctly and that the outcome is sound.
But one needs to, spending that sort of time and money just following procedure, it doesn't seem to make business sense. I understand why it happens. But the Labour Relations Act doesn't insist on such a high level of procedure. Why then are the employers doing it? Is it just simply because they don't want to be challenged at the CCMA?
I think you've got to look into what the Labour Relations Act actually does require. If you go to the Code of Good Practice, it apparently seems quite simple. Like the requirement that you've got to advise the employee in advance, that the employee should have the opportunity to be represented, they should know what the allegations are against them and have the opportunity to state their case. Those seem apparently very simple. But then if you add into that the standard of substantive proof, so the content that you actually have to prove, you've got to prove that the employee breached a rule, that the rule was known and it was a valid rule, that the rule was consistently applied, that the employee was aware of it, that the sanction fitted the transgression. So once you add all of that in, it actually becomes a complex process. And remembering still that the more formal the employer is, the larger the employer is, the higher the standard that's expected. So obviously they don't expect the same of a disciplinary inquiry for a domestic worker as they do from a financial institution. So there are different
levels that are applied.
Yeah.
Okay. Tanya, let's just say we weren't going through all of this procedure in disciplinary hearings. How could it be different? Could it be different, I guess, is the question.
Look, I think one of the things that has complicated the matter is that while the law was changed some time ago, a lot of employers have been unable to change to a more simple procedure. Yes. I think we were fortunate in Woolworths that we did manage to actually align with the new Labour Relations Act quite quickly. But a lot of employers still have layers of appeal hearings, and they still have very detailed requirements in terms of who is present, how many people are present, what level of person can be a chairperson and an investigator. And it's very difficult to unnegotiate those issues. So it almost calls for a re-regulation in some way to make sure that those old collective agreements are updated. And I think the other big solution is in capacity building in the labour market in general. And that started to happen. But capacity building of unions, of employees who don't have representation, commissioners, and then of course making sure that the labour courts are following on a similar process.
All of the stakeholders basically.
Yeah.
Tanya, thank you very much for joining me in the studio. To you at home, goodbye.
Law at Work is sponsored by Perrett van Niekerk Woodhouse Macholo, leading labour law specialists representing businesses throughout South and Southern Africa, as well as Case Law, the quick, fast and easy labour law search engine.